All right, so another Tuesday night rolls around in Quahog, and you know what that means. It means another episode of Family Guy is about to drop. And if you're like me, you're probably wondering what bizarre tangent the writers are going to drag us down this time. And honestly, looking at this episode, Family Guy Season 23, Episode 9, you gotta wonder if they just picked a random prompt out of a hat. Because when you've got a plot involving time travel, Chris Griffin's enthusiasms, and Peter Griffin's questionable life choices, you know it's going to be a ride. I mean, seriously, who greenlit this? Was it just the intern who'd had too much coffee? Because this feels like the kind of story that gets sketched out on a napkin during a particularly wild lunch break, and somehow, miraculously, ends up on your TV screen. We're talking about a premise that spirals from a school book report disaster to a full-blown temporal paradox, all while Peter is out there making life choices that would make a middle-aged man in a midlife crisis blush. It's the kind of manic energy that defines this show, for better or worse. And speaking of worse, let's just say some of the jokes in this one really push the boundaries, even for Family Guy. But hey, that's why we're here, right? To dissect it, laugh at it, and maybe cringe a little. Because at the end of the day, despite all the chaos and questionable humor, there's always something to talk about. And this episode? Oh, it gives us plenty. Get ready, because we're diving headfirst into a temporal mess that's somehow even more convoluted than the show's own continuity. This is going to be a long one, folks, so buckle up. We're going to be talking about a lot more than just Chris's embarrassing moment and Peter's bizarre nocturnal adventures. There's a whole lot of weirdness bubbling under the surface here. But before we get into all that, let me ask you something. Have you guys noticed how many of these newer episodes feel like they're desperately trying to recapture that old Family Guy magic, but they're just kind of missing the mark? It's like they've got all the ingredients but forgot the secret sauce. If you're nodding along, make sure you hit that subscribe button and the notification bell, because we're the ones who are going to tell you the truth about these episodes, no holds barred. You know, sometimes I think these episodes are made by a committee of people who just saw the first season once and now just guess what fans want. It's wild. They're either going for pure shock value or they're trying to do these elaborate sci-fi plots that, frankly, they don't have the writing staff to pull off convincingly. It's a delicate balance, and this episode really highlights that struggle. But hey, at least it's never boring, right? It's certainly not boring. It's like watching a car wreck in slow motion, but there's also a time machine involved. What more could you ask for, really? So this episode kicks off with the Griffin family at dinner, which, as usual, is not exactly a picture of domestic bliss. Lois is serving up some donated trauma stew, which is a pretty dark way to start things off, and you instantly know this isn't going to be your feel-good family sitcom episode. It sets the tone perfectly. Then, right out of the gate, Chris has this science lab mishap where a beaker almost explodes in his face. It's your typical Family Guy chaos, but it's the lead-in to his later plot. Meanwhile, Peter's fixated on a triple peanut, which is just peak Peter, isn't it? He finds fascination in the most mundane, bizarre things. The real kicker, though, comes when it's time for everyone to share their day, and Chris drops the bomb about his oral book report. And not just any book report, but one where he was apparently indisposed. Let's just say he got a little too enthusiastic about Tom Sawyer. This is where the episode really starts to cook, or maybe boil over, depending on your perspective. The entire premise hinges on Chris's mortifying public situation. The embarrassment is so intense that he wants to run away and disappear forever. And who swoops in to save the day, or at least try? Brian, of course, with Stewie's help and their conveniently available time machine. Yes, a time machine, because why not? It's Family Guy. The idea is that they'll go back in time and give Chris a do-over on his book report, erasing the humiliation. Sounds simple enough, right? Wrong. This is Family Guy. Nothing is ever simple. The time machine bit is where the episode really leans into its chaotic energy. They're not just going back an hour. They're trying to fix a deeply personal embarrassment with a device that probably shouldn't exist in their universe. And as with any Family Guy time travel plot, things go spectacularly wrong. They end up in the wrong place, which is their own house, not Chris's school, giving them a weird advantage. Brian, ever the schemer, immediately sees an opportunity, betting on sports. Because if you can go back in time, why not get rich? It's the kind of selfish, short-sighted logic that makes Brian both relatable and incredibly frustrating. We get a montage of the guys, Peter, Quagmire, and Joe, spending their Tuesday night, which is apparently Taco Tuesday, and also the night America unloads its week-old tacos, according to Joe. Their idea of fun involves scratchers, and they somehow win big. The side plot, while seemingly disconnected, becomes a crucial part of the narrative, because the winnings from those scratchers become another element that gets messed with by the time travel. Peter's obsession with the scratchers and his subsequent winnings become a source of his own questionable behavior later on. The contrast between the guy's trivial pursuits and actual societal issues like Medicare reform, hilariously pointed out by Joe, is classic Family Guy commentary. But mostly it's just Joe, being weirdly politically astute for a cop in Quahog. This episode really dives into the consequences of meddling with time. They try to fix Chris's report, but in doing so, they accidentally create a worse outcome. Meg gets seriously injured in a chemical explosion because the original distraction that saved her was no longer present. This is where the episode pivots from a simple embarrassment fix to a genuine moral quandary. They broke something, and now they have to fix it. It's a classic case of the butterfly effect, but with more explosions and less scientific accuracy. The realization that their temporal tinkering has had such dire consequences is a surprisingly serious moment for the show. And then, just when you think they've got it figured out, it turns out the original Chris, the one who was supposed to give the report, has, shall we say, taken matters into his own hands while locked away. He's apparently been having a very different kind of exciting time. The writers really went there with the implication of what Chris might have been doing in that closet. It's crude, it's juvenile, and it's exactly what you'd expect. The episode then tries to wrap things up by sending them back again to restore the original timeline, which means reintroducing the embarrassment that started it all. It's a full circle, but a messy, complicated one. The ending is a frantic attempt to course correct, emphasizing that messing with the past, even with the best intentions, is a recipe for disaster. It's a lesson the Griffins and the show itself seem to learn and forget on a weekly basis. Overall, this episode is a prime example of Family Guy's signature blend of juvenile humor, surprisingly dark themes, and convoluted plots that often rely on a convenient deus ex machina, in this case, a time machine. It explores the idea of consequences, the ripple effect of our actions, and the often unforeseen outcomes of trying to fix our mistakes. It also dives deep into the show's ability to tackle taboo subjects with a shocking lack of tact, which is both its strength and its weakness. It's an episode that definitely gives you something to talk about, whether you enjoyed it or not. And that, my friends, is the Family Guy way. It's a wild ride, and it's a perfect representation of the show's ongoing evolution, or perhaps devolution. It's a testament to their commitment to pushing boundaries, even if it means alienating some viewers along the way. The writing here is a real mixed bag. Some of the jokes land, some fall flat, and the plot feels like it was constructed with Legos by a toddler. It holds together, but just barely. It's an episode that proves, once again, that Family Guy is willing to go to extreme lengths for a laugh, even if it means sacrificing coherence or good taste. And you know what? That's probably why we keep watching. The sheer audacity of it all is part of the appeal. This is definitely an episode that will get people talking, dissecting, and probably arguing about. Now, let's dig into some of the moments that really stood out in this temporal kerfluffle. First up, the initial setup with Chris's book report. The build-up to his situation is classic Family Guy. You see him getting increasingly nervous. The teacher calls on him, and then bam, mortification. The visual of him just freezing up, the awkward silence in the classroom, and the inevitable eruption of laughter. It's cringe comedy gold. Brian and Stewie's immediate leap to time machine is also a classic. It's their go-to solution for almost any problem, no matter how mundane. And the fact that Stewie just has a time machine, built from Legos no less, is the kind of absurd logic that the show thrives on. You're just supposed to accept it. It's like they're saying, look, we need a plot device, and this is it. Deal with it. The absolute speed with which they decide to fix this minor embarrassment with major temporal meddling is hilarious. Brian, the supposed intellectual of the group, is instantly thinking about how to exploit it, while Stewie, the child prodigy, is just going along for the ride, probably enjoying the chaos.
It's a perfect snapshot of their dynamic. Then you've got Peter, Joe, and Quagmire's Tuesday night escapes. The whole Taco Tuesday bit, with Joe's strangely political commentary about America unloading week-old tacos and contrasting it with Medicare reform, is pure, unadulterated Family Guy. It's taking a mundane cultural trope and injecting it with a bizarre, tangential political observation. And their obsession with scratchers? That's just peak suburban malaise meets adult childishness. They win in modest amount, enough to feel like winners, and it fuels their whole night. The visual of them celebrating their scratcher winnings like they just won the lottery is pretty funny, and it sets up the consequences later on when Brian and Chris are messing with the timeline and affecting those very winnings. Peter's specific scratcher, Bald Bucks with Nicolas Cage and John Travolta, is a great little gag. It's just specific enough to be funny, and it shows the writers paying attention to the weird details. The fact that Peter ends up with a horoscope scroll that predicts he'll gamble with his handicapped, horny, and black friend is a bit of a mouthful and a risky joke even for them, but it's that kind of audacious humor that defines the show. It's a joke that's designed to make you ask, did they really just say that? And the answer is usually yes. The randomness of the predictions, like closing search tabs before a work presentation, is also a nice touch, adding to the absurdity. The next major moment is when Brian and Chris attempt their time travel. The DNA mismatch and secondary voice password sequence is a clever way to add some sci-fi tension. And the rapid-fire list of passwords, Zac Efron, Susan Lucci, Dora, Diego, Gold's Gym, Mykonos, is just a brilliant showcase of random pop culture and personal references. It highlights how arbitrary and personal these security measures can be, and it's funny to imagine these celebrities and locations as security codes. The way they finally get it to work with fabulous, fab, totally fab, go bitch, whatever bitch, love you bitch, yes queen, yas queen, yas queen, is peak modern internet slang, and it's hilarious how they incorporate that into a time machine password. It's a stark contrast to Peter's Sandy Shoes lie later on, showing different types of absurdity. This sequence really speeds up the pacing and builds anticipation for the actual time jump. It's a good use of a little technical mumbo-jumbo to create stakes.
The arrival in the past, or rather 16 hours ago, is a moment of classic comedic disorientation. Chris marvels at the small tree and old cars, but the real kicker is they're at their own house, not the school. This mistake, which stems from Brian using the tag on his collar as the address, is a perfectly believable screw-up for these characters. It immediately shifts the plot. Brian, ever the opportunist, doesn't see it as a problem, but as an advantage. This is where the sports betting idea comes in. His immediate thought is to exploit the timeline for personal gain. The WNBA game between the Mystics and Sparks is a very specific, modern reference, and the joke about not knowing who Caitlin Clark is, or if she's on both teams, or neither, is a funny jab at the current sports landscape, and maybe Brian's own selective awareness. It's a detail that makes the episode feel current, even if the plot mechanics are anything but. The subtle implication that this knowledge could lead to wealth is where the real stakes of their temporal meddling begin. This moment perfectly encapsulates Brian's character, smart enough to build a time machine, but too morally flexible to use it responsibly. The consequences of their actions start to manifest in a big way when they learn that Meg got severely burned in a chemical explosion because the original distraction that would have saved her was absent in this altered timeline. This is a really dark turn, and the show doesn't shy away from it. The casual way Lois mentions Meg's burns and the popsicles she can now only eat is chilling. This is where the episode transitions from a lighthearted embarrassment fix to a genuine ethical dilemma. They caused this. They have to fix it. The realization that their seemingly minor alteration, Chris's less embarrassing book report, led to such a horrific outcome for Meg is a powerful moment, even in a show known for its absurdity. It's a direct consequence of playing God with time, and it's genuinely unsettling to see how a small change can have such devastating effects on someone they supposedly care about. This is the butterfly effect in full horrifying swing. The writers are actually making a point here about unintended consequences, even if they wrap it in crude jokes later. The scene where Brian and Stewie analyze what happened, with Stewie explaining how the lack of laughter from Chris's classroom meant Meg didn't turn her head, is a fantastic piece of exposition that drives home the stakes.
The word brunt being used and Brian's dismissal of it is just perfect character work. Then there's Peter's behavior. Waking up in the middle of the night, sneaking around, and concocting a wild lie about Sandy Shoes is pure Peter Griffin. The fact that he's checking his height against a door jam sticker suggests he's worried about shrinking, which is a bizarrely specific and ultimately funny concern. His arrest for this is a great bit of escalating absurdity. It highlights how his actions, driven by some mysterious midlife crisis or just general Peterness, are becoming increasingly erratic and noticeable. The security camera catching him measuring himself against a door jam is a perfect visual gag. It's so pathetic and mundane, yet so criminal in Peter's mind.
This whole subplot is a tangent, but it adds to the overall feeling of chaos and misdirected energy within the Griffin household. It's the kind of random subplot that makes Family Guy, well, Family Guy. It doesn't always make sense, but it's undeniably entertaining in its sheer ridiculousness. The attempt to fix Meg's injury becomes the central conflict. Stewie's exasperated explanation of needing to reintroduce the original Chris, the Turgid Chris, to create the distracting laughter is a masterclass in scientific jargon mixed with crude humor. The idea of locking away one Chris while releasing another is a complex temporal maneuver that only Stewie could devise. The reveal that the Chris they locked up in the closet, instead of just being embarrassed, has apparently been very busy. The mutterings about Lola Bunny from Space Jam confirmed that Chris's problem was not just a one-time occurrence. This is where the show goes for pure, unadulterated juvenile humor, and it's a bold choice. The implication of what Chris might have been doing alone in a closet for hours is left to the audience's imagination, which, given Chris's character, is probably a terrifying place to go. Stewie's reaction, a smoking hot rabbit, is a perfect blend of his childlike understanding and his mature, often cynical outlook. This moment really pushes the boundaries of what's acceptable, but it's also undeniably a punchline that the episode has been building towards. It's a joke that's so specific to Chris's character and his perpetual state of awkwardness and immaturity. And finally, the resolution, or lack thereof, they get Chris to give his report again, but this time it's ridiculously simplified. The cover shows a kid painting a fence. And inside it is paper, which is made from trees. The end. It's a joke that's so anticlimactic, it's almost brilliant. The teacher's reaction, "Chris, I may have to fail you," and Chris's nonchalant reply, "'cause the only chub in town is the insurance company," is a great final punchline that brings it back to the crude humor and ties into the earlier mention of insurance. This entire endeavor, from a mortifying book report to a time-traveling mission to save Meg, culminates in a report that's so bad it might actually get him failed. It's a perfect encapsulation of the episode's chaotic, often nonsensical logic. The show uses this ending to show that even with all the advanced technology and temporal manipulation, some things remain stubbornly the same, like Chris's inability to perform basic tasks. It's a funny, if slightly disheartening conclusion to a wild plot. Okay, so looking at the main players in this temporal mess, Chris Griffin, bless his simple heart, is the catalyst for all this. His initial mortification over his book report is relatable, but his subsequent actions, both the time travel to fix it and what he apparently did in the closet, are peak Chris. He's the lovable idiot who constantly finds himself in deeply awkward situations. This episode really leans into his inherent lack of control and his unique biological responses. His performance here is a reminder that while he's often the butt of the joke, he's also the character whose struggles, however pathetic, can drive an entire episode. He's the innocent, or not so innocent, victim of circumstance and his own biology. He's definitely used well here, as his personal failing is the central engine of the plot. Brian, the supposed voice of reason, is as self-serving and hypocritical as ever. He's the one with the time machine, the one who instigates the betting, and the one who claims to want to fix things. Yet his first instinct is always personal gain. He's the character who's always preaching morality but rarely practicing it. In this episode, he's instrumental in both causing the problem and trying to fix it, but his motivations are always suspect. He uses the time machine not for altruism but for selfish reasons, which ultimately leads to Meg's injury. His character arc here, if you can call it that, is about his flawed logic and his inability to escape his own inherent nature. He's used effectively, but he's also a character who's starting to feel a bit repetitive. Stewie, the genius toddler, is the brains behind the operation, literally building the time machine.
He's the one who understands the scientific implications of their actions, even if he doesn't always care about the ethical ones. His exasperation with Chris and his quick thinking when things go wrong are classic Stewie. He's the driving force behind the temporal fixes, and his dialogue is always a highlight, blending complex science with childlike observations. This episode really showcases his intelligence and his often unconventional problem-solving skills. He's a constant in the show, always brilliant and always ready with a witty retort. Peter Griffin, bless his heart, is off on his own tangent for most of this episode, worried about shrinking and making up elaborate lies about a mysterious woman named Sandy Shoes. His subplot is a classic example of Family Guy's willingness to throw in completely unrelated storylines just for the sake of a gag. While not directly involved in the time travel plot, his erratic behavior and subsequent arrest add to the overall feeling of chaos and dysfunction within the Griffin household. He's the embodiment of Peter's arrested development and his tendency to create unnecessary drama. He's used as a comedic foil to the main plot, adding to the overall absurdity. Lois Griffin, as usual, is the long-suffering matriarch trying to hold everything together. Her reactions to the unfolding chaos, from the donated stew to Meg's burns, are what ground the episode in a semblance of reality. She's the one who has to deal with the fallout of everyone else's actions. While not directly involved in the time travel, her role as the pragmatic mother is crucial. She represents the audience's likely reaction to the insanity unfolding around her. Her quiet suffering and occasional exasperation are often some of the funniest parts of an episode, highlighting the absurdity of her situation. Meg Griffin, sadly, is the victim. She's the one who suffers the consequences of everyone else's temporal meddling. Her injury is a dark turn, and it serves as the wake-up call that forces Brian and Stewie to actually try and fix things. While not given much to do in terms of agency, her role as the suffering sibling is integral to the plot's resolution. She's the perpetual punching bag, and this episode takes that to a new, more painful extreme. It's a reminder of her unfortunate lot in life, and it adds a layer of consequence to the otherwise flippant time travel plot. Joe Swanson and Glenn Quagmire are there for the Tuesday Night Guys outing, participating in the Scratcher Lottery.
Their involvement is minimal, but serves to highlight Peter's social circle and their shared penchant for lowbrow entertainment. Joe's brief political commentary and Quagmire's usual lecherous remarks are par for the course. They're the supporting cast who exist to provide specific types of jokes and contribute to the general atmosphere of Quahog. They don't evolve or change, but they fulfill their designated roles with predictable hilarity. So, what did we miss? Let's talk about some of the deeper cuts and callbacks. The concept of donated stews born of trauma as Lois's go-to meal is a brilliant, darkly funny detail. It's a quick way to establish the tone of the Griffin household and hint at a history of interesting events. It's the kind of throwaway line that makes you pause and think, wait, what? It's also a perfect example of how Family Guy can inject bleak humor into even the most mundane situations. The Rush song lyric, "A modern-day warrior, mean, mean stride, today's Tom Sawyer, mean, mean pride," being presented as the actual report on Tom Sawyer is a fantastic piece of misdirection and absurdity. It's so unexpected that Chris would interpret a rock anthem as a literary analysis, and the fact that he Googled it and found that tells you everything you need to know about the internet and Chris's research skills. This is a classic Family Guy joke where the setup is mundane and the punchline is gloriously bizarre. It's a testament to how the show can find humor in the most unlikely places. When Peter says, "A tea time, but it's dark out," and Lois clarifies, "Miniature golf, Lois, and it's gonna be a blast, even more fun than a blow pop." That little comparison is a subtle yet perfect character moment for Peter. It reveals his childlike enthusiasm and his tendency to equate simple pleasures with extreme joy. Blow pops are pretty great, but comparing miniature golf to it and then adding even more fun just screams Peter. It's a tiny detail that adds a lot of personality. The whole subplot with Peter's sandy shoes lie and his subsequent arrest for shrinking is a masterclass in escalating absurdity. The detail of him checking his height against a door jamb sticker is so specific and weirdly sad. It's a visual gag that's both pathetic and hilarious. It's the kind of gag that relies on the audience knowing Peter is prone to such ridiculous schemes and insecurities. The fact that he's actually arrested for it and the store security camera is the evidence just pushes it into glorious, nonsensical territory. This is the kind of off-the-wall subplot that defines the show. The scratcher winnings and the resulting gifts are also full of subtle details. Cleveland, for example, using his winnings to buy Ozempic and joke about looking like skinny Jonah Hill, while also aspiring to be an aggressively unstable relationship partner, is a very specific, almost unnerving character beat. It's a modern cultural reference that's integrated in a way that's both funny and a little unsettling. It shows how the show tries to stay current, even if it's through the lens of its established characters. The horoscope scrolls predictions, "Be sure to gamble today with your handicapped, horny, and black friend." This is a joke that definitely pushed boundaries, and it's the kind of thing that makes you pause and wonder how it got past standards and practices. It's the randomness and the slightly offensive nature of it that makes it a hidden gem for those who appreciate the show's more daring humor. It's a punchline that's meant to be shocking, and it succeeds in that regard. The moment Brian realizes Meg's injury was caused by their actions.
The dialogue where Stewie explains the butterfly effect, specifically how the lack of laughter from Chris's classroom meant Meg didn't turn her head, is crucial. The word brunt is used, and Brian's casual dismissal of it as a weird word, such a dumb language, is a subtle jab at language itself and a moment of pure Brian obliviousness. It's a hidden detail that adds depth to the science fiction element of the plot and highlights Brian's flawed intellect. And lastly, the reveal that Chris, locked in the custodial closet, has taken matters into his own hands and is muttering about Lola Bunny from Space Jam. This is such a specific and unexpected turn. The implication is clear, and Stewie's reaction, a smoking hot rabbit, perfectly captures the essence of Chris's predicament. It's a detail that's likely to be missed by casual viewers who aren't paying attention to the implications of Chris being left alone, but it's a defining moment of pure, unadulterated Chris Griffin humor. Now, what if they'd taken a different route with this episode? Let's imagine a few alternative scenarios. What if instead of Brian and Stewie having a time machine, they had to find some other, more ridiculous way to fix Chris's embarrassment? Like, what if they had to stage a fake emergency at the school to get him out of class? Or what if they tried to convince Principal Shepard that Chris had a rare, temporary condition that made him overly enthusiastic?
The possibilities for absurd problem-solving are endless with these characters. The reliance on the time machine, while effective for a plot device, can sometimes feel a little too convenient. A more grounded, albeit still absurd, solution might have been more creatively rewarding. Maybe they could have had Peter, in his own bumbling way, try to help Chris prepare for the report, leading to an even bigger disaster that somehow inadvertently fixes the original problem. That would have been pure Peter. Another idea, what if the focus wasn't solely on Chris's embarrassment, but on Peter's subplot? Imagine a full episode dedicated to Peter's obsession with shrinking, his affair with Sandy Shoes, and his subsequent arrest. That could have been a classic Peter-centric episode with all the weirdness and moral ambiguity we've come to expect. The time travel element could have been a small, almost throwaway detail, or perhaps Peter's shrinking obsession was somehow linked to a temporal anomaly. This way, his subplot wouldn't feel like a tacked-on distraction, but a core element of the narrative. It might have sacrificed the deeper themes of consequence, but it would have delivered a more focused comedic experience. And what about Meg? Her injury is a crucial plot point, but what if, instead of being a victim of temporal paradox, she was somehow involved in the time travel? Maybe she accidentally activated the machine or was trying to use it for her own purposes. That would have given her more agency and potentially led to a more interesting outcome. Perhaps she tried to go back and make herself popular, only to create an even worse reality for herself. That would have been a classic be careful what you wish for scenario, and it's something this show has explored before, but with Meg at the center, it could have been particularly poignant, or at least funnier. The current situation, while having consequences, makes Meg feel more like a prop for Brian and Stewie's lesson. All right, let's wrap this up. My verdict on this episode? I'd give it a solid 6.8 out of 10. Why not a round number? Because while it had its moments of brilliance, its chaotic plotting and reliance on shock value held it back from true greatness. The 6 points are for the sheer audacity of the time travel plot, the dark humor, and a few genuinely laugh-out-loud moments. The 0.8 comes from those moments where the writing felt particularly sharp, like the setup for Meg's injury and some of the character interactions. What pulled it down? The pacing felt a bit uneven, and some of the subplots, like Peter shrinking, felt disconnected and served only to pad out the runtime. The time machine, while a great plot device, also means the writers can pretty much do anything, which can lead to stories that feel a bit too convenient or nonsensical, even for Family Guy. This episode is really for the hardcore Family Guy fans, the ones who appreciate the show's willingness to go to extreme, often uncomfortable places. If you're looking for tight plotting or consistent character development, this isn't the episode for you. But if you enjoy the show's signature brand of juvenile humor, dark satire, and outlandish sci-fi plots, you'll likely find something to enjoy here. It's an episode that thrives on its absurdity and its ability to shock. What would have pushed the score higher? A more cohesive plot would have been a major improvement. If all the storylines had felt more interconnected, and if the consequences of the time travel felt more consistently dire and impactful, it would have elevated the episode. For instance, if Peter's actions had been more directly tied to the temporal anomaly, or if Meg's injury had had even more far-reaching implications, it would have made the narrative stronger. Ultimately, this episode is a prime example of Family Guy trying to balance its old-school gross-out humor with more modern, complex plot devices like time travel.
It's a show that's constantly evolving, or perhaps just rearranging its deck chairs. And just like the characters in this episode, it's always on a wild, unpredictable ride, often fueled by questionable decisions and a complete disregard for the consequences. It's the kind of show that, despite all its flaws, you can't help but keep watching, just to see what insane thing it'll do next. And with this episode, they certainly delivered on the insane. Much like Peter trying to hide his affair with Sandy's shoes in the dark of the car, this episode often operates in the shadows of good taste. But somehow, against all odds, it manages to shine a light on the absurdity of life itself. And for that, we'll keep tuning in.